Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and our latest edition of New Music Shuffle, where I talk about a variety of different albums or releases that have come out recently and kind of try to basically recommend things to you guys so you guys can go out and check it out if you're interested. So this show's a little bit different. I decided that because of a lot of different releases that have been coming out that are EP style, shorter albums, I have been enjoying a lot of these, and usually I kind of focus more on full-length albums. I feel like there's more meat there to kind of talk about for a full review, but I don't want to neglect some of these cool little short albums that are coming out, along the way, and so that's kind of what I'm focused on at this period in time. So I have several of them. I have 5 of them actually that I want to talk through. I'm going to try to go through them very briefly, but want to bring some attention to these great new releases that may have passed you by because they're just these short little albums. But it seems to be kind of a trend that a lot of bands are coming out with these kind of shorter pieces because they want to release music out there and get the attention out there, but not have to take so long to craft a whole full-length album. And sometimes, it's a teaser for what's to come of a bigger album. There's different variety of reasons why bands are releasing these EPs, but it's great music and deserves showcasing. So I'm going to talk about some of them. So let's get into it. All right, first on my list, I wanted to talk about The Deer Hunter and The Indigo Child. This is an interesting release because it's not a very traditional release. Of course, the band's kind of known for their big, expansive concept records in that Axe series, Axe 1 through 5. And they've done a lot of other separate albums. They did the Color Spectrum, where they kind of had different EPs based on different colors in the rainbow, essentially, and had the music kind of encapsulate that color, which I thought was an intriguing concept. Then they've had a few other releases here and there. They had a great EP that came out a few years ago, All Is As All Should Be, which was fantastic as well. But this release is a bit different because they're kind of entering a new world, it seems, of concept. They had the Axe series, which was incredible, but now they're entering this kind of Indigo Child universe, as it were, I think. And I feel like the release of this has been a little bit confusing. At least it was to me at first, trying to figure out what exactly is going to be on this. What can we expect? I've talked about it a bit on my New Music Friday shows, but I'm going to try to kind of explain what we've got here. And hopefully I'm right. So basically what we've got here with the EP is basically 2 singles and then a collection of kind of film score soundtrack music is basically what we have, because in tandem with this release was a short film that they released, and you can check that out. I'll put that in the description, a short film that accompanies this. So basically half of the album, half of the EP is soundtrack music that accompanies that film. It's basically the score that goes behind this kind of new sci-fi short film that they did that's kind of the first glimpse into this world. And then there's 2 singles, The Indigo Child and The Indigo Child Reprise. So that takes up kind of the first half of the EP. And the short film is really interesting. It's kind of in a Star Wars, Dune kind of vein, kind of interesting. It's very short, but it's really kind of cool and done well, I think. Some great acting and some great stuff. I think it's really interesting and kind of is a unique way to introduce you to a new world that they're trying to explore. And so definitely recommend checking that out, especially if you're kind of a sci-fi fan and interested in to see that kind of production and what is all involved. I know they worked hard on that project, so really cool to see that. But what's most interesting to me about this release is the 2 singles, the Indigo Child and the Indigo Child Reprise, which are 2 really fantastic tracks by the band. And the Indigo Child is it's so eclectic and different. It's hard to even describe. There's so many things going on. It really feels kind of otherworldly, as I think they're trying to go for, the sci-fi kind of feel to it. Almost has like a world music vibe to it in part, but otherworld music, as it were. It's like taking this world music kind of style and vaulting it into space and giving you kind of a spacey feel. But there's kind of some poppy melodies in the chorus. There's a funk element to it, I'd say, that's really interesting. Great vocals. I love some of these vocal harmonies that kind of pepper throughout the track. There's just so much going on. There's a halfway point where things are more dreamy and atmospheric with kind of a vocal effect. And then you get back into the main groove with some angelic vocalizations and different sounds, different keyboard sounds, kind of introducing different elements. It's really fascinating, and I love the chorus. It's really catchy and really sticks in my head. And there's kind of an interesting moment. There's kind of an abrupt change in the music about 5 minutes, 45 seconds in, and then it leads to the ending section where it's pretty laid back and groovy. I'm kind of obsessed with this track. I think it's really cool and really spells great promise for what's to come from the Deer Hunter. And then the Indigo Child Reprise is also cool. More of a laid back, dreamy kind of style with female vocals this time. I believe the artist is Tivoli, who's doing some of these dreamy female vocals in a very more ballad throwback 70s style is how I hear it. The last minute and a half is interesting. It kind of picks up a bit and has kind of an interesting catchy poppy melody that kind of carries this out. So I really thought these were cool tracks. A little bit of a short tease, because to me the other tracks, as fun as it is to kind of get the soundtrack and as much as I think the film is really cool, I really get music more for the vocal tracks, for more of a band style song. So I'm not really as into that side, but I really like these singles. I think it spells promise for the band. And I'm excited to see where they go because I hear that they're going to actually do a full-length album next spring. So that should be more in line with these kind of single tracks, more so than the film score type music. But it's well done too. Not to kind of knock the film score side of it. I think it's really done well. It has a lot of interesting elements and things to it. It's just I'm not as much into that instrumental kind of film score style music. But for those of you that love that, I think it's a really great piece of this release as well. So really cool teaser to what's to come. Kind of a weird, convoluted release that was hard to unpack what was going on with it. Maybe it could have been marketed a bit better. But all in all, now that I have it all and can observe what's going on, I think it's really cool and worth checking out. So that's the first release on the list. Next, we have Moron Police and their new EP, The Stranger and the Hightide. Now, this was a highly anticipated EP because they had such a knockout album with A Boat on the Sea, which came out a couple years ago. Fantastic album that just really had the perfect marriage of kind of that quirky instrumental prog stuff that I like, but with catchy melodies. And it was really unique, but really accessible somehow at the same time. It really breezes by. It's kind of a short album, and it's the perfect length. It just feels really great, and it's always fun to listen to. It's never boring. It speeds along at a great pace. So it's an incredible release. And so they released this EP, which is almost a little bit of a side project as they're working on their main new album. This was kind of a group of songs that maybe didn't fit into the main theme of their album that's upcoming. They talked about this EP as kind of almost having a country western style vibe. That's kind of how they've been billing it, as kind of country western prog, which is really interesting and really grabbed my attention of what to expect here. And I can hear a bit of that in the mix. I don't think it's very overwhelming. I think it's still very much in line with their style, that the songs are very bouncy and fun and have that poppy element, but with little prog flourishes, some really interesting instrumentation and great performances. Every track is really fun and really strong. The Power of Jesus starts the album really fun right off the bat. Little twinge of that country western vibe they're talking about. Some great singing and melody over some interesting piano and guitar behind it. Just really varied and interesting music. Gets a bit heavier towards the end, kind of a headbanging style ending, but it fits in line with it, I think, and it adds that extra layer of variety and interest. And then we get The Stranger and the Hightide, which I feel embraces that kind of country western vibe most out of all of these tracks. but it still reminds me of tracks from A Boat on the Sea. Just once again, that kind of fun vibe that just kind of permeates throughout here. It's infectious and fun, and that's what I like in my music. It never takes itself too seriously, and it's just a joy to listen to. It ends with a nice, really cool acoustic guitar playing out over this kind of wind-blowing effect, kind of evoking that, country western desert kind of landscape with like the tumbleweeds tumbling by. So really cool. And Waiting for Wastelands is when the whole band kind of kicks in and has a really fun melody with some driving rock music, kind of a folky vibe I feel in the background. Maybe that's part of that country western, but I feel like it veers into kind of a folk side almost. And then the album ends with Parachutes, a more laid back kind of almost ballad of a track with some jazzy kind of sounds in the background of keyboard and guitar. Really interesting melodies. I think it's really well done as well. So really a cool, varied album. It's short. It's a short EP. It's like, 20 minutes long, but it goes through a lot of different feels and styles in that short length. And I just think this band is on fire. They're reaching their heights and their peak. I think they're getting a lot of good interest and well-deserved interest in the prog community. They're just wonderful, and they deserve all that attention. So please check this one out. It's very, very much a highlight of the year for me, and makes me really can't wait for their next album, which should be an incredible one. Next, I want to talk about Mariana Simkina and her Disillusioned EP. Now, Mariana Simkina, also known as Mariana Simkina of I Am the Morning, kind of one half of that equation with Gleb Kolyadin as the keyboard pianist of that group, and then she's more of the singer, has an incredible vocal, kind of these angelic, really beautiful vocals. They're from Russia, but I believe she is living in London now. But this is a really cool little EP. It has like 3 major tracks, kind of 1, 3, and 5, and then these 2 more interlude type vocal tracks in between them. Kind of her just angelic choral singing in different languages. And one's in Hungarian, I believe, and one's in Icelandic. So these are cool little pieces that are really great showcases for her vocal talent. But what's really most interesting, I suppose, are the longer tracks that kind of surround those. The first track is Friend, with a very dark vibe to it, but it's really a cool contrast because she has these kind of darker, kind of melancholic strings behind her, kind of this brooding sound, but she has this heavenly angelic voice that kind of brings a contrast to that darkness and brings kind of the light through it. But, there's definitely some darker themes being explored here, at least sonically, so it's really interesting to listen to. Disillusioned is probably my favorite track of the album. I think it's really, really great, really well done. Once again, kind of has that darker vibe. It starts off with some vocals and a bass line with some light percussion as it builds. Beautiful, beautiful vocals once again. She's an incredible vocalist, one of the best singers in the business to me. I think she just has such a great, unique voice. And there's just such a great chorus melody in this song that really captures me. It's very unique, but very cool and different. I really like it. Beautiful strings and orchestration. Strings are a very, very clear, important feature of this EP. I think she really, whereas her I Am the Morning stuff focuses more with the piano work from Gleb, this is more focused on kind of this string quartet vibe that kind of backs up all of this great music. And an end kind of closes it with more of that beautiful, beautiful singing. This one has a bit more of piano, but strings as well. Wonderful tapestry of beautiful music to play this out. So definitely recommended just for the beauty of it and just how heavenly the vocals are. I just think it's an incredible piece, and I think it's well worth checking out. So please check out that one, Mariana Simkina, Disillusioned. All right, now we move to another fun one. This is on a totally different kind of side as compared to those others. This is Novena and their new The Stopped Clock EP. Now, Novena is more of kind of a heavier band, more in that progressive metal style. And sometimes they're almost a bit veering on the too aggressive even for me. I mean, there's a moment here where there's really aggressive kind of growling vocals, but it's not over the course of the whole album. It's not, they do it more tastefully in my opinion. They put it in in more limited doses to kind of have it give more of an impact when it comes. But it's not like Between the Buried and Me or Opeth at their early stages where it was just all growling all the time. But there's a little bit of an element of that, so I want to definitely make sure that's well known. Gareth Mason is the one who does more of the heavier, aggressive vocals, but then Ross Jennings is also a vocalist in the band, and he does more of the kind of lighter, more beautiful harmonic vocals. So they kind of have a cool yin and yang situation going here between the two vocalists, which kind of capture two different sides of the musical landscape, I think, and really creates a cool variety. But this EP is only 3 tracks. The Stopped Clock is really the highlight of it. It's this big 12-minute progressive metal epic that has so much going on. Like I said, it has that heavy, aggressive, growling vocals by Gareth, but a lot of melodic singing as well throughout. There's a lot of lighter passages. There's a lot of complex passages. There's moments that make me think of Haken, and them at their most complex and twisty, like Puzzle Box or something else from Vector. Just, it really is a cool track that goes through so many different styles and moods throughout its runtime. And what's kind of cool is it kind of accompanies their previous album, 11th Hour. It kind of links to it by having the fade-in carries directly from a track from the 11th Hour called Prison Walls, and then the outro leads directly into 2258, which is the leading track for 11th Hour. So it kind of like provides this time loop, as it were, where it follows from the ending of that record and then leads directly back to the beginning of that record. So just kind of cool how they're playing with that concept and having this track kind of be a bridge that kind of brings you back into the beginning of the album. I don't know, I just thought it was a clever trick, and it's a really wonderful track. And then they do a Billie Eilish cover of Bury a Friend. I like Billie Eilish. I know a lot of my subscribers probably don't care for Billie Eilish or just don't know of Billie Eilish that much, which I totally respect. But this is a really interesting cover of her music. It starts off more in line with Billie Eilish's version, kind of this dark, kind of minimal vibe. But then it gets more intense and kind of brings the progressive metal towards the end. I think it's really a great showcase for Gareth and his singing, because he's the featured vocalist, at least the beginning of this track, and does a great job kind of channeling that Billie Eilish energy, I'd say. And it almost has kind of a jazzy style in parts of it. The piano especially has a cool kind of jazzy vibe. I don't know, I really like this track a lot. And then the EP closes with In Loving Memory, which is just a total ballad, really sweet, and it's dedicated to a dear friend of theirs that passed. So it's definitely a track you can think about when thinking about people that you may have lost recently. And so it's really touching and special. Some great heartfelt vocals from Ross Jennings. Really soars and feels like kind of anthemic and very meaningful and sincere and beautiful. So kind of a cool contrast to the darker vibe of the first 2 tracks. So really, all in all, a great collection of music that showcases an up-and-coming progressive metal band that really is doing great work. So I really enjoyed this EP. I thought it was really excellent. And finally, an EP, this maybe came out a little bit like a while ago, I think, but it's one I've only discovered recently, so I wanted to mention it. This is Crown Lands and their White Buffalo EP. Crown Lands is more on a hard rock style, but with little bits of progressive leanings. I'd compare them most to like Rush or early Led Zeppelin or some of the harder rock of like the 70s. They definitely have that feel to them. It's a duo from Canada, from Oshawa, Ontario. We have Cody Bowles on vocals and drums, and guitarist, bassist, keyboardist Kevin Kamau. Really interesting. It's just this duo, but they have so much going on in their musical landscape here. I really like the opening track, Inner Light, which is kind of a powerful instrumental. Kind of reminds me of like that period, like moving pictures era of Rush. Great playing. It slowly builds and kind of has this almost trance-like feel to it. This kind of Eastern, mysterious kind of vibe to it. I think it's a really excellent opener to this EP that really showcases the band and their style. I really appreciated it. I think they have a great sense of musicality. It sounds fantastic. The production is really strong. So they have a really bright future, I think. White Buffalo is probably the more pop-centric track. It's still hard rock. It's still kind of that classic rock vibe, but it has some great catchy vocals and a great sing-along chorus. The vocalist really has like this kind of high Geddy Lee or Robert Plant style vocals that really kind of brings that spirit of that classic rock era. This group, to be honest, kind of reminds me of Greta Van Fleet, where they're kind of a throwback act towards the classic rock era, but infusing it with their own sound. I think they probably do a bit better at making it more of their own than Greta Van Fleet does, who lean very heavily on their Led Zeppelin sound. I think this is a bit more of an eclectic stew of these different hard rock bands with their own flavor kind of mixed in. So if you like some of what Greta Van Fleet does, but you feel it's a little bit maybe derivative, I think this could be more in lane with what you might like. The Witching Hour follows with a slow burning build before it explodes more in the chorus. Some cool, mysterious, mystic style verses with great supporting guitar. It's a really cool track that has a cool vibe to it. And then the Oracle is kind of the big, long epic, as it were, of the album. I believe it's like 13 minutes long in length. And it just has some really cool, softer keyboard and restrained melodic vocals to start. You know, it starts kind of slow and builds, has some interesting rhythms before more power is added to the song. There's little proggy elements peppered in. Like I said, this isn't a full-on prog record in my opinion, but they definitely have pieces of prog influence in there, especially with kind of this Rush-inspired vibe. There's also moments in this that kind of make me think of Tool. You know, even though it's more classic rock style in the sound, I think there's some bits of Tool's kind of polyrhythms and soundscapes, kind of this more atmospheric style that I think would be most in line with like a Tool record. And 9 minutes into the track, it gets really spacey and almost sounds like it's about to end before we get kind of this big blistering guitar solo. So really a cool little EP that shows a great promise for this young band that I just hadn't heard of before. I believe they do have a full-length album before this one that I'm definitely going to check out, but definitely something that struck me. I saw the video of White Buffalo on YouTube, which was how I got introduced to them. I thought it was really excellent and wanted to explore more. So definitely a cool EP that I recommend to you guys. So there you go, 5 really cool EPs that have come out over the past little while. All recommended. I think they're all great and fantastic in their own ways. A lot of diversity here. Each of these is very different from the other, but I think if you give them a chance, there'll be something you like in that mix. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show, and hopefully you found something that you can pick up and enjoy on your own. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. I do these videos very regularly. I'm trying all the time to recommend new music to everybody because it's important to me to get the news out there that great music is still being made today, and if you search hard enough you can find some incredible stuff. Thank you guys so much, and I'll hopefully catch you guys in another video. Bye.